While my fiancé whistled in the kitchen, believing he had secured his future, I stared at the notification that shattered our illusion of love. The email confirmed he had tried to secretly add his name to the deed of my luxury lakefront home. He thinks he is walking down the aisle tomorrow to claim 50% of my hard-earned empire. He has no idea that instead of vows, I am preparing a war that will destroy him completely. My name is Elena Ward, at 34 years old. I stood in the center of the life I had meticulously designed, much like the architectural blueprints framed in black steel along the hallway of my home. This glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the dark, placid waters of a lake just outside Seattle was not an inheritance. It was not a gift from a wealthy father or a divorce settlement from a past lover. Every beam of timber, every pane of floor-to-ceiling glass, and the sleek Italian sports car resting in the temperature-controlled garage below were trophies of my own war against poverty. I had clawed my way up from nothing, fueled by instant noodles and sleepless nights, to build a reputation as one of the most sought-after architects on the West Coast. From where I stood in the living room, looking out at the gray twilight, everything seemed perfect. The house smelled of roasting garlic and expensive red wine. In the kitchen, the man I was supposed to marry in 48 hours was humming a soft jazz tune. Liam Carter looked the part of the devoted fiancé perfectly. He was wearing a linen apron over his shirt, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that I used to find comforting. He was stirring a pot of marinara, preparing my favorite pasta dish with the focus of a man who wanted nothing more than to please his future wife. To anyone looking in through the glass, we were the definition of a modern fairy tale. The vibration of my phone against my palm broke the trance. I glanced down, expecting a text from the wedding planner about the floral arrangements or a confirmation for the rehearsal dinner. Instead, a notification from my notary's office sat on the screen. The subject line read, "Urgent confirmation of title ownership update." I frowned. There should not have been any updates. The house was mine, paid for in full, save for a small mortgage I kept for tax leverage. Curiosity turned to a cold, sharp dread as I unlocked the screen and opened the attached PDF. My eyes scanned the legal jargon until they landed on the paragraph regarding the deed transfer. Grantee Elena Ward and Liam Carter, as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. The air in my lungs seemed to vanish. I had never authorized this. I had never spoken to a lawyer about adding Liam to the deed. In fact, I had specifically told my broker that my assets would remain separate until I decided otherwise. Yet here it was, a draft awaiting final submission, initiated by a request that claimed to have my digital authorization. Babe Liam called out from the kitchen, his voice dripping with affection. "You have to taste this sauce. I think I finally got the basil ratio right." I locked my phone instantly, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I forced my legs to move, walking toward the kitchen island where he stood with a wooden spoon in hand. He looked so innocent. He smiled at me, that boyish, charming smile that had disarmed me 2 years ago at a charity gala. "Here," he said, blowing on the spoon before offering it to me. "Tell me what you think." I tasted the sauce. It was rich and savory, but in my mouth, it tasted like ash. As I swallowed, my mind began to race backward, replaying our conversations from the last month. I remembered his casual comments about how we are one now and how married couples shouldn't have secrets or separate ledgers. I remembered how insistent he had been lately about me signing a stack of minor bank forms for our joint checking account, always rushing me when I was tired or distracted. "It's delicious," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Liam beamed, turning back to the stove. "Great. Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. By the way, did you get a chance to forward that email to the bank, the one about the insurance adjustment? They called me again today." His tone was casual, but I caught the tension in his shoulders. He was not asking about insurance. He was checking to see if the transfer had gone through. He was fishing to see if I had noticed the notification. Not yet. I lied smoothly, leaning against the marble counter. "I've been so swamped with the final guest list. I'll do it in the morning." "You should do it tonight," he said, chopping parsley a little too aggressively, just to get it out of the way. "You know how you get stressed on the day of—" I watched him. I watched the man I loved, the man I was about to pledge my life to, and for the first time, I saw a stranger. He was not nervous about the wedding. He was nervous that his window of opportunity was closing. He needed his name on that deed before we said I do, or else he would have to fight for it in a divorce court later. By doing it now, he was securing half of my net worth before the marriage license was even signed. I turned away, walking back toward the living room window. The lake outside was black and still, reflecting the lights of the house. A heavy realization settled in my chest, colder than the water out there. This was not a partnership. This was a heist. Elena Liam's voice drifted from the kitchen, laced with a hint of impatience. "Everything okay?" I stared at my reflection in the glass. The woman looking back at me was not the vulnerable girl from the Midwest anymore. She was a woman who had built skyscrapers and negotiated million-dollar contracts. If my gut is right, I whispered to myself, my lips barely moving, then tonight isn't just a romantic dinner. It is the night I start a war. I took a deep breath, smoothing the silk of my blouse. I unlocked my phone one last time, forwarded the incriminating PDF to my private secure server, and then slid the device into my pocket. I turned back toward the kitchen, a radiant, loving smile plastered across my face. "Everything is perfect. Darling," I called out, walking toward the man who thought he had outsmarted me. "Actually, cancel the wine. Open the champagne. Tonight. I have a surprise for you." To understand why that notification on my phone felt like a physical blow. You have to understand where I came from. My life did not begin with lake views and Italian marble. It began in a rental house with peeling paint in a Rust Belt town in the Midwest, where the sky always seemed permanently stained gray by factory smoke. I grew up listening to the sound of my mother counting coins at the kitchen table late at night. She was a woman worn down by a life of depending on unreliable men, and her lesson to me was the only inheritance she had to give. "Elena, listen to me," she would say, her hands rough from double shifts at the diner. "Never let a man hold the purse strings. You make your own way. You buy your own roof. That is the only way you stay free." That advice became my religion. By my early 20s, I was studying architecture on a scholarship, but tuition did not cover living expenses. While my classmates went to parties, I went to my second job. I spent 2 years sleeping on a lumpy sofa in a friend's living room because I could not afford a dorm. I survived on instant noodles and stale coffee, fueled by a hunger that had nothing to do with food. I wanted to build things. I wanted to create spaces that were permanent and safe. Exactly the opposite of the life I had known. When I graduated at the top of my class, the real world was not much kinder. I landed a job at a small firm where older male clients looked right through me. They saw a young woman and assumed I was the assistant, not the architect. I swallowed my pride and let my work scream for me. I stayed late every night, redrawing plans until they were perfect, forcing them to respect me through sheer competence. Then came the gamble. I took every cent I had saved and opened Ward Studio. The first 6 months were a nightmare of silence. I remember sitting in my empty leased office, staring at a bank balance that had dipped below $300, wondering if I had made a mistake. But then I landed the bid for a downtown fusion restaurant. I poured my soul into that design, creating a structure that defied gravity and convention. Photos of the interior went viral on social media, and suddenly, the phone started ringing. And it never stopped. High-end residential contracts followed. 6-figure commissions became normal. I did not just save money, I hoarded it, channeling it into the dream I had nurtured since I was a little girl. Buying the lake house was the finish line. I remember the day I signed the papers. It was a crisp Tuesday in November. I had transferred a staggering sum 80% of the purchase price in cash, leaving only a small mortgage for credit purposes. The loan officer, a stern woman with glasses, had looked at me with genuine respect as she pushed the final document across the mahogany table. "This property belongs to you, Ms. E. Ward," she had said, tapping the paper. "Solely to you." I walked out of that bank feeling 10 feet tall. I drove my new sports car to the empty house, walked into the living room, and screamed in triumph. I had done it. I had broken the cycle. For a long time, I kept my heart as guarded as my bank account. I dated, but I never let anyone close enough to see the ledgers. I used to joke with my best friend Maya over drinks. "It is too late for them," I would say, laughing as I twirled my wine glass. "Anyone who steps into my life now is just a guest. They are late to the party. I built the castle myself. Then I met Liam. It was at a fundraising gala for sustainable architecture. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, and he approached me not with a cheesy pickup line, but with a question about my latest project. He was charming, articulate, and seemed utterly unimpressed by my wealth. He told me he was a consultant, that he admired strong, independent women. I remember one night early in our relationship, we were standing on my balcony. I made a comment about being a workaholic, apologizing for canceling a date to finish a blueprint. Liam had taken my hand, kissed my knuckles, and looked me in the eye. "Elena, do not apologize," he had said softly. "I love that you are a powerhouse. I do not want to take care of you. I want to stand beside you while you take over the world." I believed him. I believed he was the one man who did not want anything from me other than my love. I let my guard down. I let him into my house. I let him into my life. And now, standing in that same house, realizing he had tried to steal half of it with a forged digital signature, I felt a rage so pure it almost felt like clarity. My mother was right. I just had to learn the lesson the hard way. Looking back, the signs were there, buried under layers of charm and strategic patience. In the early days of our relationship, Liam had played the role of the independent man to perfection. I remember asking him to move in after we had been dating for a year. I wanted him close, but he had shaken his head, smiling that gentle, self-deprecating smile that I had fallen in love with. "Not yet. Elle," he had told me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I don't want to be that guy who just slides into your success. Until we are really a family, until we are married, I want to keep my place. I want to respect your sanctuary." It had sounded so noble. It made me trust him implicitly because he seemed to understand that my wealth was a sensitive subject. But 6 months ago, when he finally gave up his lease and brought his boxes into my villa, the dynamic shifted in ways I was too in love to analyze. It started small. He rearranged the furniture in the living room to optimize the flow. He took down my framed architectural sketches in the hallway and replaced them with photos of us. He slowly filled the empty drawers in the master bath with his grooming kits. He called it nesting. He would hug me from behind and whisper, "See, it feels like a real home now. Our home, at the time." I thought it was sweet. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, it looks less like moving in and more like a colonization. The first real crack in the glass appeared last Tuesday. I was sitting in my home office, reviewing blueprints for a commercial complex. When my phone rang, it was Sarah, my private banker. We had a long relationship. She handled my accounts when I had $500, and she handled them now that I had millions. "Elena," she said, her voice hesitant, "I am just calling to verify the details on the refinancing application before we push it to underwriting. I noticed the request to add Mr. Carter as a co-borrower and co-owner on the title." I froze. My pen hovered over the blueprint. "Refinancing," I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I had not applied for refinancing. My interest rate was historically low. Sarah paused. "Yes. The application came through the portal yesterday. It requests to pull equity out of the property and add Liam Carter to the deed." A cold sensation, like ice water, dripped down my spine. The room suddenly felt very small, but years of navigating male-dominated construction sites had taught me one thing: never show panic. "Oh, right," I said, forcing a casual laugh that sounded foreign to my own ears. "My brain is fried with the wedding planning. Sarah, I totally forgot we sent that over. Do me a favor, email me the full PDF file. I want to double-check the terms before we finalize anything." "Of course," she replied, sounding relieved. "I'll send it now." I hung up and waited. When the email dinged, I opened the attachment with trembling fingers. I scrolled past the financial jargon straight to the signature page, and there it was, Elena Ward. It looked like my signature. It had the sharp loop on the W and the quick dash on the D, but it was too perfect. It lacked the slight slant I always used when signing fast. It was a tracing, a good one, maybe an 80% match, but definitely a forgery. The memory hit me like a physical slap. 2 weeks ago, a rainy Tuesday evening, Liam had rushed through the door, wet and frantic, holding a stack of damp papers. "Babe, I am so sorry," he had said, breathless. "I totally forgot the deadline for the car insurance bundle. If we don't post this by 5, the rate jumps up. I need you to just sign here and here. Quick." I haven't read it. I had protested, reaching for my reading glasses. He had laughed, pulling the papers back slightly, playing the lovable, disorganized Fiancé. "It is standard liability stuff. Come on. Please, I'll cook dinner for a week." I had signed the bottom of 3 pages he held out for me, trusting him. He must have slipped the deed transfer authorization into the stack. He had used my trust as a weapon to rob me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But then I heard the garage door open below me. Liam was home. I crept out of the office and stood at the top of the stairs. The acoustics in the house were excellent, another feature I had designed myself. I could hear him down in the garage, pacing. He was on the phone. "No." "I know," Liam was saying, his voice low and devoid of the warmth he used with me. "Yeah, the lawyer said it is cleaner this way. If she signs before the wedding, it is a gift. If we do it after, it is community property. But this way, I have immediate leverage." There was a pause as the person on the other end spoke. "She won't notice." Liam scoffed. "She is so focused on the flowers and the seating chart." "I have handled the bank. It is done." I stepped back into the shadows, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a gasp. Inside my head, a war broke out. One voice, the voice of the woman who loved him, cried out, "Maybe he is just insecure. Maybe he just wants to feel equal." But the other voice, the cold, logical voice that had built a business from zero, whispered back, "This isn't a mistake, Elena. This is a heist." I did not go downstairs to confront him. I did not scream. Instead, I walked back into my office and locked the door. I saved the PDF to an external hard drive. I took screenshots of the metadata showing when the file was created. Then, I logged into every single bank account I owned and changed the passwords, initiating a silent transfer of my liquid assets into a holding trust my lawyer had set up years ago. I stared at the screen, my eyes dry and burning. The wedding was in 3 days. I was not going to cancel it. Not yet. I was going to watch him. I was going to let him think he had won. Right up until the moment I burned his entire world to the ground. I met Maya at the Archive, a dimly lit speakeasy downtown where the music was low enough to talk and the booths were high enough to hide. Maya Lopez was not just my best friend. She was a shark in a pencil skirt, a divorce attorney who had spent the last decade disassembling the lives of cheating husbands in court. I did not waste time with pleasantries. As soon as the waitress set down our old fashions, I fanned the printouts across the dark wood table, the forged refinance application, the metadata timestamps, the insurance papers I had blindly signed. Tell me I am crazy. I said, my voice tight. Tell me I am just a paranoid bride getting cold feet. Maya picked up the documents. She did not look at me. She put on her reading glasses and scanned the pages with the surgical precision of a coroner examining a body. She lingered on the signature page, then flipped to the bank request. "You are not crazy, Elena," she said, dropping the papers back onto the table. "This is textbook. I see this twice a month. We call it the Trojan horse maneuver. The guy gets into the house, establishes residency, and then quietly starts mingling the assets so that by the time you realize he is a leech, he has already sucked enough blood to claim common law rights or marital property." I took a long sip of whiskey, the burn doing nothing to warm the chill in my chest. I trusted him. "Maya," he told me. He told me he wanted to build an empire with me. "Did you ever run a background check on him?" Maya asked. Her tone was not judgmental, just factual. I looked down at my hands. No, I thought. Checking his credit score felt like a betrayal. I didn't want to treat our relationship like a business transaction. "Elena," Maya sighed, pulling her iPad out of her tote bag. "Marriage is a business transaction. It is the biggest financial contract you will ever sign." She tapped on the screen, logging into one of the expensive legal databases her firm subscribed to. I watched her reflection in the mirror behind the bar as her eyes darted back and forth. "Okay, let's see who Liam Carter really is," she muttered. A moment later, her eyebrows shot up. "Wow. Okay, this is impressive, in a bad way." What I leaned in. "He is drowning." Maya said, turning the screen toward me. "He has 3 maxed-out credit cards. Total debt is hovering around $45,000. He has a personal loan with a predatory interest rate that he is 2 months behind on. And look at this lawsuit from last year. A small claims court judgment for unpaid rent at his last apartment. I felt sick. He told me he was investing in a startup. He said his cash flow was tight because he was reinvesting. He is investing. All right, Maya said grimly. He is investing in you. She tapped the screen again. But this is the part that should make you run. She pulled up a scanned contract from a separate window. It looked like a consulting agreement between Liam and a shell company I had never heard of. "Read Clause 4, Maya commanded. I squinted at the glowing text. "The consultant guarantees collateral in the form of real estate assets to be acquired upon marriage, specifically the property located at 1402 Lakeview Drive, to secure the initial capital injection." I covered my mouth. He promised my house. He promised my house as collateral for a loan before we are even married. "He sold a future he doesn't own yet," Maya said, taking the iPad back. "He is not just a gold digger. Elena, he is desperate. He needs your equity to pay off the sharks circling him. If you marry him without protection, that house is gone within a year." I sat back, the noise of the bar fading into a dull buzz. "I have to cancel. I have to call it off right now." "No," Maya said sharply. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "If you cancel tonight," he spins the narrative. He plays the victim. He tells everyone you are a cold-hearted bitch who left him at the altar, and he might even sue you for emotional distress or some other nonsense to get a settlement. We need to be smarter." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thin blue folder. "What is this?" I asked. "I drafted this morning after you called me in a panic," Maya said. "It is a scorched earth prenuptial agreement. It lists every single asset you own as separate property. It explicitly states that any debt incurred by either party remains their sole responsibility, and it forces him to disclose all financial liabilities under penalty of perjury." I looked at the folder. It looked harmless, but I knew it was a weapon. "You are going to give this to him," Maya instructed, her eyes hard. "You are going to ask him to sign it, and you are going to record his reaction, if he loves you. If this is all just a big misunderstanding, he will sign it without blinking. And if he doesn't," I asked, though I already knew the answer, "then you have your evidence," Maya said, You don't just walk away. Elena, you destroy his credibility so he can never do this to another woman again. You are not just a bride anymore. You are the CEO of your life. Act like it. I picked up the folder. It felt heavy in my hand, like a loaded gun. For the first time all day, the fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. Okay, I said, my voice steady. I will do it. If he wants a transaction, I will give him one. The week before the wedding was a masterclass in deception. But for the first time in our relationship, I was the one wearing the mask to the outside world. I was the glowing bride-to-be, standing on a velvet pedestal while a seamstress adjusted the hem of my gown. I smiled for the photographer, laughed at the cake tasting, and held Liam's hand during the floral consultation. But inside, my mind was cold and calculating, recording every word he spoke like a court stenographer. Liam was relentless, though he tried to disguise his urgency as romantic pragmatism. Over dinner on Tuesday, he poured me a glass of wine and brought up the bank accounts again. It just makes sense to merge everything into one pot after Saturday. Babe, he said, slicing his steak with precise movements. It is cleaner. Easier to manage. Real families do not keep score. Right. Standing together means sharing everything, especially the house. It should feel like our home on paper, not just in spirit. I took a sip of wine to hide the sneer threatening to curl my lip. You are so right, honey. I lied. I will look into the paperwork next week. It was not just him. His mother, Deborah, had arrived early for the festivities, and she walked through my villa with the air of a woman measuring drapes for a renovation. During a brunch on the patio, she waved a fork toward the guest wing. It will be such a relief for Liam to get out of that cramped apartment, she said, letting out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. Honestly, once you two are married, I might just come stay here for a month in the summer. God knows you have enough empty rooms. It is silly for him to pay rent when this place is just sitting here. She did not ask. She assumed. To them, my hard-earned sanctuary was already a family asset waiting to be divvied up. The tension snapped tight on Wednesday evening. Liam came home with a fresh manila envelope, his energy frantic beneath a veneer of casualness. He slid the papers across the kitchen island while I was making tea. Hey, good news, he said, tapping the stack. I got the bank to agree to a slight adjustment on the mortgage rate, but we have to lock it in before the weekend. Just sign here and here. Quick, before the offer expires. I looked at the papers. I looked at him. He was sweating slightly at the temples. I rubbed my forehead, feigning a dramatic exhaustion. Liam, my brain is absolute mush. If I look at one more document tonight, I think I will faint. Leave it on the counter. I will take it to the office tomorrow and sign it after my morning coffee. You know how picky I am about reading the fine print. It is just a standard form. L, he pressed, his voice edging toward irritation. Just sign it now so I can scan it. Why do you have to make everything a project? Because I am an architect, I said, softening my refusal with a gentle touch to his arm. Details are my job. Don't worry, I will handle it. He forced a smile, but I saw the muscle in his jaw jump. As soon as he went upstairs to shower, I photographed every single page and sent them to Maya. Her reply came 20 minutes later. Clause 14. It transfers the right of sale and encumbrance to joint owners. If you sign this, you can't sell your own house without his signature. He is trying to handcuff you to the property. For the next 2 days, I played a game of selective amnesia. I left the papers at the office. I spilled coffee on them and had to wait for a reprint. I blamed the wedding planner for distracting me. I watched Liam unravel. He tapped his foot constantly. He checked his watch. The polite, charming facade was cracking, revealing the desperate man beneath. While he panicked, Maya finished her masterpiece. She sent over a courier with a thick blue folder, the prenuptial agreement. It was brutal. It designated my house, my car, my studio, and my investments as solely mine. It stated that Liam had zero claim to any asset acquired before the marriage. It required a full disclosure of all debts, and it explicitly forbade him from using my name for any loan. On Friday afternoon, the day before the rehearsal dinner, I decided it was time to spring the trap. I invited Liam out to the deck overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water that made everything look idyllic. I poured 2 glasses of wine and handed him one. "I have been thinking about what you said," I began, my voice soft and sweet, "about security, about making sure we are both on the same page before the wedding." Liam's eyes lit up. He thought I was finally yielding. He thought I was about to hand him the keys to the kingdom. "I completely agree," I said, reaching into my bag. "So, to put both our minds at ease, I think we should sign this." I placed the blue folder on the patio table between us. The sun was dipping below the tree line, casting long, distorted shadows across the deck. Liam picked it up with a casual, almost dismissive flick of his wrist, flashing that easy grin that had charmed half of Seattle. A prenup. He laughed, shaking his head as if I had just told a cute joke. "Babe, seriously, you know I do not care about this stuff. You can keep your millions. I just want you, write whatever you want. I will sign it in blood if it makes you happy. That is good to hear," I said, sipping my wine, watching him over the rim of the glass. "Because this is non-negotiable." He flipped the folder open, humming a little tune. For the first 10 seconds, his expression remained light. Then, his eyes snagged on clause 3. I watched the transformation happen in real time. It was fascinating and terrifying. The corners of his mouth twitched downward, his brow furrowed. The relaxed posture stiffened as he read the words that explicitly stated all assets acquired prior to the marriage, specifically the lake house, the studio, and the accounts would remain the sole property of Elena Ward, with no claim available to the spouse. His humming stopped abruptly. "Wait," Liam said, his voice dropping an octave. This says the house stays yours, even after we are married. It is my house." "Liam," I replied calmly. "I bought it. I pay the mortgage." He looked up, and the warmth was gone from his eyes. In its place was a cold, calculating flicker that he quickly tried to mask with hurt. "Elena, honey." "I get that," he said, leaning forward, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "But this makes it sound like we are roommates. Sole property. No claim. This isn't a marriage contract. It is a business deal." "Do you really think I am here for your money? Is that what you think of me?" It was a classic deflection. He was trying to make me feel guilty for protecting myself. "If you are not here for the money," I said, keeping my voice level, refusing to take the emotional bait, "then this piece of paper changes nothing. It simply ensures that what I built remains mine. If we stay together forever, it is irrelevant. If we don't, it is fair." Liam slammed the folder shut. "It is not about the money. It is about trust. How can we build a family if you are already planning for the divorce?" He stood up and paced the length of the deck, running a hand through his hair. Then he stopped and turned back to me, trying a different angle. "Negotiation. Look, I don't care about the studio or your bank accounts," he said, softening his tone. "But the house. The house is where we are going to raise our children. It needs to be ours, for their security. And the car? I mean, come on, Elle. You barely drive the sports car. I am the one taking it in for service. It makes sense to put that in my name for insurance purposes, right?" I stared at him. He was actually haggling. He was standing there, 48 hours before our wedding, trying to carve out a slice of my net worth like it was a piece of cake. "Okay," I said, setting my glass down. If we make the house joint property, how much capital are you prepared to inject into the principal immediately? And while we are on the topic of finances, what is the current total of your personal debt? Liam froze. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. My debt is manageable, he snapped, defensive now. It is just startup costs. I told you, once the wedding is over. I have some deals closing that will wipe it all out. But I can't do that if you are treating me like a hostile employee. He shoved the folder back toward me, the papers sliding dangerously close to the edge of the table. I am not signing this, he declared, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and panic. I am not going to let you emasculate me with a contract that says I am worth nothing in this relationship. If you loved me, you would burn this. I quietly tapped the screen of my smartwatch under the table, ensuring the voice recorder was capturing every word of his refusal. He had just confirmed everything Maya suspected. He did not want me. He wanted the deed. I looked at him, seeing the sweat beading on his upper lip. If I pushed him too hard now, he might bolt. Or worse, he might realize I knew about the forgery. I needed him at the altar. I needed him in front of the audience. I let my shoulders slump, feigning defeat. I let out a long, shaky sigh. Okay, I whispered, looking down at my lap. Okay, Liam, you are right. This is too much stress right before the big day. I don't want us fighting. I picked up the folder and slipped it into my bag. We can talk about it after we get back from the honeymoon. I lied, forcing a weak smile. Let's just focus on the wedding. Liam's relief was palpable. He exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for 5 minutes. He walked over and kissed the top of my head, his confidence returning instantly. Thank you, babe, he said, squeezing my shoulder. You will see. You don't need paper to protect you. I am going to take care of everything. I watched him walk back into the house, already pulling out his phone to make a call. Yes, you will, I murmured to the empty air. You have no idea. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private dining room in downtown Seattle, a place where the chandeliers dripped crystal and the waiters moved like ghosts. To the 20 people sitting around the long mahogany table, I was the picture of a blushing bride. I laughed at the right moments, held Liam's hand when he reached for mine, and raised my glass during the toasts. But beneath the silk of my dress, my body was coiled tight, and my mind was running a cold, continuous commentary on the farce unfolding before me. Liam was drunk on more than just the expensive wine I had paid for. He was drunk on victory. He sat at the head of the table, his arm draped casually over the back of my chair, looking like a king surveying a kingdom he had conquered without firing a single shot. He leaned toward his best man, a loud stockbroker named Greg, and his voice carried just enough for me to hear. After this weekend, man, life goes to a whole new level, Liam bragged, swirling his glass. You should see the view from the master bedroom. Waking up to that lake every day. It changes a man, and the garage has space for 2 sports cars. I am thinking of getting a Porsche to match hers. You know, his and hers matching set. I took a sip of water to hide the smirk threatening to break my facade. His and hers. He was already spending money he did not have on a garage he did not own. Then Greg laughed, clapping Liam on the shoulder. You really landed on your feet, buddy. Married to a genius and mortgage-free by 35. Most of us are going to be paying off loans until we die. You won the lottery. The table went quiet for a split second. It was the kind of crude, money-focused comment that polite society usually avoided. Liam froze, realizing the slip. But I stepped in before the silence could curdle. Liam is the prize, I said, beaming at him with dead eyes. I am the lucky one. The tension broke, laughter resumed, and Liam squeezed my shoulder, whispering, You are perfect, babe. While he turned back to accept another round of congratulations, I slid my phone out of my clutch. I angled it against the centerpiece, ensuring the camera lens had a clear view of his face. and hit record. I captured him raising a toast to our house and our future equity, preserving his greed in high definition. Later in the evening, I excused myself to the restroom. As I walked into the stall, the main door opened and I heard the familiar voices of Liam's sister, Chloe, and his mother, Deborah. I froze, my hand hovering over the lock. I just don't see why I have to wait until Christmas. Deborah was complaining. If the house is that big, there is no reason for me to renew my lease here. I already looked up the forms to transfer my mailing address to the lake house. It is just more convenient. Just wait until they are back from the honeymoon. Mom, Chloe replied. The sound of lipstick being applied echoing in the tiled room. Liam said it is a done deal, but let her get used to the idea first. Once they are married, it is half his anyway. She can't kick family out. I stood in the silence of the stall, staring at the marble door. They were not just planning a wedding. They were planning an invasion. They looked at me and saw a host organism, a golden goose to be plucked and quartered. I waited for them to leave before I stepped out, my reflection in the mirror looking paler but sharper. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a direct message on Instagram from a user with no profile picture. Don't be blind. The message read. Below it was a photo. It was grainy, taken in low light, but the subjects were unmistakable. It was Liam, sitting in a booth at a dive bar, his hand resting intimately on the thigh of a woman I did not know. The timestamp metadata showed it was taken 3 months ago, right around the time he was professing his undying loyalty to me while I paid off his credit card interest. I stared at the image. I expected to feel heartbroken. I expected tears. Instead, I felt a click of finality, like the last piece of a puzzle snapping into place. He wanted my money to pay his debts, my house to house his mother, and a wife to maintain his image, all while he kept his options open on the side. I forwarded the photo to Maya immediately. Her reply came within seconds. Tomorrow is not just a wedding. Elena, it is your stage. Do not miss your cue. That night, I lay alone in my bed at the lake house, the silence of the large, empty rooms pressing in on me. My wedding dress hung on the back of the door, a ghostly silhouette in the moonlight. I looked at it for a long time. Tomorrow, I whispered to the darkness. I will walk into that church, but I will not be walking in as a bride. I will be walking in as a prosecutor. The morning of the wedding arrived with a cruel, blinding clarity. The venue was a boutique hotel in the heart of the city, chosen for its rooftop garden that offered a panoramic view of the skyline. It was the kind of place that smelled of expensive lilies and old money, a stage perfectly set for the performance of a lifetime. Sunlight flooded the bridal suite, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, mocking the darkness that had taken root in my chest. I stood before the full-length mirror, my reflection staring back at me like a stranger. The dress was a masterpiece of architectural minimalism, structured silk that draped over my frame without a single unnecessary frill. The makeup artist had just finished, stepping back to admire her work with a satisfied sigh. You look like you stepped right out of a magazine, she said, packing away her brushes. The groom is going to forget how to breathe. I forced a smile, bringing the crystal flute of champagne to my lips. My hand trembled, just a fraction, sending a tiny ripple through the gold liquid. No one noticed. They thought it was anticipation. They did not know it was the adrenaline of a soldier waiting for the signal to charge. Maya slipped into the room, closing the door softly behind her. She was dressed in a pale lavender bridesmaid gown, but her eyes held the sharp focus of a litigator entering a courtroom. She held up a small, silver USB drive before slipping it into her clutch. The sound system is primed, Maya said, her voice low. I swapped the file. The folder is titled Our Journey, just like you asked. The technician thinks it is a montage of baby photos and vacation selfies. And the hotel I asked, setting my glass down. I just spoke to the manager. She replied, "Every cent is paid. The venue, the catering, the flowers. The contract is in the name of Ward Studio. If we blow this up, the financial loss is 100% yours. There are no refunds for a canceled ceremony, even if the groom is a fraud." I nodded. "It is the price of admission. I am willing to pay it." Downstairs, the guests were beginning to arrive. I walked to the window and looked down at the courtyard entrance. I saw Liam. He was holding court near the valet stand, looking devastatingly handsome in a bespoke tuxedo that I knew I would eventually see on my credit card statement. He was laughing, clapping his best man on the back, radiating the confidence of a man who believed he had pulled off the perfect heist. I could hear his voice drifting up, loud and boastful. "Oh yeah, the honeymoon is all set. 2 weeks in Santorini. I booked the cliffside suite. We are going to live like royalty." As he spoke, my phone buzzed on the vanity table. I walked over and picked it up. It was the final confirmation from my private banker. Refinance application canceled per customer request. Title transfer voided. A cold satisfaction settled in my gut. He was down there celebrating a victory that had already been snatched away. He just did not know it yet. I stepped out onto the private balcony to get some air. The wind was picking up, tugging at my veil. From the hallway around the corner, I heard a familiar voice. It was Liam again, likely stepping away to take a private call. "Don't worry about the interest rate," he was saying, his tone hushed but urgent. "Give me 3 months. I am going to restructure all the finances once the deed is recorded. We will have the house as collateral. I will have the cash to pay you back by Christmas. Just keep the investors happy until then." He was selling my house to pay off his loan sharks before we had even cut the cake. Maya appeared at my elbow, startling me. She had heard him too. She looked at me, her expression softening into genuine concern. "Elena," she whispered, "you still have an out. We can go downstairs right now and tell everyone you are sick. We can say it is food poisoning or a panic attack. We can cancel this quietly. You do not have to do this in front of 200 people. You do not have to flay yourself open to expose him." I looked at Maya. Then I looked down at the diamond ring on my finger. I knew exactly how much it cost, and I knew exactly which of my credit cards had been maxed out to buy it. "No," I said, my voice steady and cold. "If I do this quietly, he spins the story. He becomes the victim. He walks away and finds another woman with a good credit score and a trusting heart, and he does this to her. I am not just protecting my assets. Maya, I am burning his bridge so he can never cross it again." I turned back toward the room, grabbing my bouquet of white roses. "Let's go," I said. It is time to walk down the aisle. The organ music swelled, filling the rooftop garden with the classic notes of Pachelbel's canon. I took the arm of my godfather, a man who had known me since I was eating canned beans for dinner, and we began the slow walk down the aisle. To the 200 guests assembled on white folding chairs, this was a fairy tale. The Denver skyline gleamed behind the altar. The floral arrangements were lush and expensive, and the bride was glowing. They saw a woman walking toward her happy ending. I knew I was walking into a demolition zone. Liam stood at the end of the runner, his hands clasped in front of him. When I reached him, he took my hand, his grip firm and possessive. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of mints and hidden nerves. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his eyes scanning my face with a look of total victory. "I can't believe I am this lucky. Today is going to be perfect." I looked up at him. I did not blush. I did not squeeze his hand back. I simply gave him a smile that did not reach my eyes, a sharp, enigmatic curve of the lips that made his brow furrow in confusion for a split second. The officiant began the ceremony, reciting a script about partnership and trust that felt like a bad joke. Behind us, a large LED screen cycled through photos of our courtship. There was Liam wrapping a coat around my shoulders. There was Liam cooking dinner. The guests sighed collectively, charmed by the image of the devoted partner he had curated so carefully. Then came the vows. Liam retrieved a folded piece of paper from his pocket with a flourish. He cleared his throat, looking out at the audience with misty eyes. "Elena," he began, his voice trembling with practiced emotion. "From the moment I met you, I knew I wanted to take care of you. I promised to be your shelter. I promised to share everything with you, my heart, my life, and my future. I vow to protect you from the world." A few bridesmaids dabbed at their eyes. My aunt in the front row sniffled audibly. It was a masterful performance. Elena, the officiant, asked gently, "Do you have your vows?" I looked at the officiant, then at the expectant crowd, and finally at Liam. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and amplified by the lapel mic the officiant was holding near me, "I do not need the paper. Can I have that?" I took the microphone from the startled officiant. The silence in the garden was absolute. Liam looked at me, a flicker of panic starting to ignite behind his eyes. "I prepared something a little different," I said, turning toward the audio booth where Maya was giving a thumbs up. "Could we please run the special presentation?" Liam smiled nervously at the guests. "She loves surprises," he joked weakly. The romantic piano music cut out abruptly. The screen behind us went black for a second, then flared to life. But instead of a photo of us kissing in Paris, a high-resolution PDF document filled the massive display. It was the email from the bank. The text was blown up so everyone in the back row could read it. Subject: refinance application. Co-borrower Liam Carter. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. "What is this?" Liam hissed, reaching for my arm. I stepped out of his reach. The image changed. Now it was a forensic comparison of signatures, my real one next to the forgery he had traced onto the deed transfer. Then the audio started. It was crystal clear. "After the wedding. It is community property anyway. I just need to get my name on the title now so I have leverage." Liam's voice boomed over the speakers, followed by the drunken slur I had recorded at the rehearsal dinner. "Life goes to a whole new level. Garage space for 2 sports cars." The guests gasped. It was a sound like air being sucked out of the room. Liam stood frozen, his face draining of all color, looking like a wax figure melting in the heat. The screen flashed again, a credit card statement showing $45,000 in debt, a lawsuit for unpaid rent, and finally, the photo of him in the dive bar, his hand resting intimately on the leg of another woman, dated 3 months ago. "Turn it off, Deborah!" his mother shrieked from the front row. She jumped up, knocking her chair over, and tried to rush the stage. "Stop this! You are ruining him!" 2 large security guards, hired specifically by Maya, stepped into the aisle and blocked her path with crossed arms. She screamed, but the video played on. I waited until the loop finished and the screen went black. I stood in the center of the altar, the microphone steady in my hand, while the murmurs of the crowd rose to a roar. "I am Elena Ward," I said, and my voice cut through the noise like a blade. The crowd fell silent again. I grew up with nothing. I worked double shifts and ate instant noodles to build this life. I bought this house. I bought the car he drives. I built my empire brick by brick. I turned slowly to face Liam. He was trembling now, his hands shaking at his sides, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. "I am the only person who decides who walks into my life," I continued, staring him down. "And I am the only person who decides who gets evicted from it." I took a step closer to him, invading his personal space, forcing him to look at me. "Liam," I said, pitching my voice so every single person could hear the accusation, "do you want to explain to these 200 people, including your mother, why you tried to forge bank documents, hide your massive debt, and use this marriage to steal my assets?" I held the microphone out toward him, waiting. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolutely delicious. Liam stared at the microphone in my hand, his face flushing a deep, blotchy red. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled wheeze. This is ridiculous, he stammered, looking wildly at the guests. It is a misunderstanding. It is a bank system error. You know how technology is? I never sent that. He looked pleadingly at Mark, one of his groomsmen who happened to work as a senior loan officer at a rival bank. He expected backup. Instead, Mark stood up slowly, adjusting his tie, looking uncomfortable but resolute. Liam, Mark said, his voice carrying in the silent garden. I saw the header in the video. That is an authenticated internal bank communication. That is not a glitch. Man, you filed the paperwork. The excuse evaporated instantly. Liam's panic curdled into something uglier. He stopped playing the victim and bared his teeth, his charming mask finally slipping off completely. You are insane, he spat at me, pointing a shaking finger. You are actually evil. You brought everyone here to humiliate me. You think this is funny. You are trying to destroy my reputation because of some paranoia. The guests recoiled. I saw the shock on their faces. They were finally seeing the man I had lived with for the last 6 months, the man who thought he was entitled to everything I owned. I did not flinch. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the thin blue folder I had offered him on the deck just 2 days ago. I held it high so everyone could see. Paranoia, I asked calmly. All I asked was for you to sign this. A simple piece of paper stating that you were marrying me for love, not for my real estate portfolio. You refused. You told me you would not be emasculated. So, today, I am refusing to be robbed. I dropped the folder on the ground at his feet. Then I pulled a thick, sealed envelope from my pocket and slapped it into his chest. He instinctively grabbed it. That is a notice of termination of our cohabitation, I said, my voice cold and precise. You have 24 hours to remove your personal effects from my property. The locks will be changed tomorrow at noon. Inside, you will also find a demand letter for the repayment of the $15,000 I loaned you for your investment, which I now know was just a cover for your gambling debts. If you harass me, my lawyer will file for a restraining order immediately. Maya stepped forward then, smooth and professional, addressing the crowd like she was in a courtroom. For everyone concerned, she announced, her voice projecting clearly. Please note that no marriage license was ever submitted to the county clerk. Legally, this ceremony is nothing more than a very expensive theatrical performance. There is no marriage to annul because there never was one. A silence hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then, somewhere in the back row, a single person started clapping. It was a woman. Then another joined in. Within seconds, a wave of applause rippled through the garden, growing louder and more emphatic. It was not polite applause. It was the sound of people cheering for justice. I officially cancel this wedding, I declared, looking Liam dead in the eye. But the food and wine are paid for. Everyone is welcome to stay and eat. Consider it a celebration of me dodging the biggest mistake of my life. Liam let out a guttural roar of rage. He lunged toward me, his hands reaching for the microphone, his eyes wide with violence. You bitch, he screamed. He never reached me. 2 large security guards in dark suits stepped out from the floral archway, intercepting him with practiced ease. They held him back by the arms, creating a wall of muscle between us. Let me go, Liam shouted, struggling uselessly. Deborah, his mother, scrambled up from the floor where she had fallen. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her makeup. You monster, she shrieked at me, pointing a trembling finger. You ruined my son's life. You destroyed him before I could answer. An older woman in a navy hat stood up on the groom's side. It was Liam's Aunt Sarah. She looked at Deborah with absolute disdain. "Oh, shut up. Deborah," Aunt Sarah said sharply. "If the boy was innocent, he would have signed the prenup. He ruined himself." The blunt truth hung in the air, silencing Deborah's wails. It was the final nail in the coffin of their dignity. I looked at Liam one last time. He was panting, held back by the guards, looking small and pathetic in his rented tuxedo. I slid the 3-carat diamond ring off my finger. It caught the sunlight, glittering with a promise that had been a lie from the start. I reached out and pressed it into his hand. "Take it," I said softly, just loud enough for him to hear. "You can sell it to pay off your credit cards, but you will never touch my house, my car, or 1 single cent of my money again." I turned my back on him. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked back down the aisle, my head held high, my bouquet swinging loosely in my hand. The guests parted for me, their expressions a mix of awe and respect. I could hear the wind rustling the leaves and the distant sound of the city, but the loudest sound was the beating of my own heart, steady, strong, and free. I walked out of the hotel and into the cool afternoon air. The valet saw me coming and scrambled to get the key to my car. I took it from him and walked over to my Italian sports car, the one I had bought with my own bonus check 3 years ago. I opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. I kicked off my white satin heels and tossed them into the passenger seat. I pressed the start button, and the engine roared to life, a deep, throaty growl that sounded like power. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The hotel shrank into the distance, a small toy building containing a small, greedy man. I shifted gears and merged onto the highway, the road stretching out before me, wide and open. For the first time in my life, I truly belonged to myself. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment down below and tell me where you are listening from. I would love to connect with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so more people can hear this story.